Clara woke early as she always did, the soft light of dawn spilling over the fields near her small home. The morning air was cool, carrying the faint smell of fresh earth and growing crops. Birds chirped in the trees, and the distant sound of cattle could be heard from the neighboring farm. For most, this would have been a peaceful scene, but Clara felt a heaviness in her chest. Today she knew her life would change forever. Her family had been struggling for months. The summer had been harsh, leaving their crops withered and weak. Money was tight, and every coin had already been spent trying to pay off debts. Her parents spoke in low voices at night, their faces lined with worry. Clara understood the situation, but that understanding did little to ease her own fears. She had always dreamed of a life beyond the fields, of learning, of adventure, of seeing the wide world. That dream felt impossible now, crushed beneath the weight of necessity. It was her father who finally spoke the words that had been hanging silently in the air for weeks. "Clara," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "there is a man, a rancher, very wealthy. He says he will pay our debts if you marry a stranger." Clara's heart stopped. She stared at him, unable to breathe. "Marry a stranger?" she whispered. Her mother's eyes were wet with tears. "We have no choice, child. If we refuse, we lose everything. I cannot see us lose our home, our land." She trailed off, the rest of the sentence drowned in the weight of reality. Clara felt anger rise, then fear, then a strange numbness. She had never felt so trapped. Her hands shook and she turned away, unable to face their eyes. For days she had imagined her life continuing as it was, and now it was being pulled from beneath her like the earth before a storm. The days passed quickly. There was little time to prepare for a marriage that Clara did not want. She packed her simple belongings, her mother's quiet sobs echoing in the room, her father avoiding her gaze. Then, on the morning of departure, she mounted the horse they had borrowed from a neighbor and rode toward a life she did not choose. The journey to the ranch was long and tiring. The sun beat down and the dusty roads made Clara's throat dry and her eyes water. She thought constantly about the man she would meet, Ethan. A stranger, a man whose life had been entirely unknown to her, who now held her future in his hands. She wondered what he would be like. Was he kind? Was he cruel? Would he even care about her thoughts, her dreams, her fears? When she finally arrived at the ranch, the sight of it took her breath away. The land was vast, stretching as far as the eye could see. The house was large and imposing, made of strong wood and stone, standing tall against the endless sky. Clara's heart pounded in her chest. She had never seen anything like it. This was a place of wealth and power, a world so different from her own small farm. And in this world she would have to live. Ethan met her at the gate. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a stern face and sharp eyes. His hair was dark and his skin tanned from long hours in the sun. There was no warmth in his greeting, only a nod as if acknowledging a duty rather than a person. Clara felt a shiver run down her spine. "This is your home now," he said simply. His voice was deep, calm, and carried the weight of authority. Clara nodded, unable to speak. The first days in the house were difficult. Clara felt like a bird in a cage, surrounded by unfamiliar furniture, unfamiliar rules, and an unfamiliar man. Ethan was polite but distant, offering guidance and instructions but no comfort. He expected her to adjust quickly, to accept the life she had been thrust into, and she struggled with every part of it. Clara spent her mornings learning the routines of the ranch, from feeding animals to helping in the kitchen. The work was hard, but it gave her something to focus on, a way to escape the storm of her own thoughts. Ethan watched her quietly, occasionally offering advice or correcting her when necessary. He was strict but not cruel. That small detail gave Clara a tiny spark of hope, though she did not dare admit it even to herself. Nights were the hardest. Clara lay awake in her new room, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cattle, the rustling of the wind through the trees, the creaking of the house settling. She thought of her family, of the life she had lost, and of the stranger beside her in a house that felt too big, too empty. Fear gnawed at her, but so did curiosity. There was something about Ethan that she could not understand, a quiet strength, a mystery she wanted to unravel. One evening, a sudden storm rolled over the ranch. Rain lashed against the windows. Wind howled through the trees and lightning lit up the dark sky. Clara was frightened, and she found herself outside when a young calf had wandered too far from the pen. Without thinking, she ran toward it, mud sucking at her boots, rain soaking her hair. Ethan appeared beside her almost instantly, his presence solid and reassuring. Together they guided the calf back to safety. In that moment, Clara saw a different side of him, protective, capable, and strangely gentle. Her heart thumped in a new way, a mixture of fear and admiration, and for the first time, she felt that maybe, just maybe, this stranger was not entirely unknown. After the storm passed, they stood silently in the mud, catching their breath. Ethan looked at her, his eyes softer than before. "You handled that well," he said. His voice carried no judgment, only acknowledgement. Clara felt a warmth she had not expected. That night she returned to her room and stared out at the darkened fields. She thought of the calf, of Ethan's quiet strength, and of the strange twist of fate that had brought her here. She realized that while she did not choose this life, it had already begun to change her. She was stronger than she had believed, capable of courage she had never imagined. Clara did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if she would ever love Ethan, or if their partnership would remain one of necessity. But for the first time since she had been told she must marry him, she felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, life could still hold surprises, even in a world that had seemed so cruel and unyielding. And so, Clara lay down, listening to the wind and the rain, feeling a strange sense of anticipation. She had been forced into a life she did not choose, yet she could already see the first threads of something new, something that might, in time, change her forever. The days passed slowly at the ranch, but each one brought something new for Clara. The first tension of forced marriage had not disappeared, but it had softened just enough for her to notice small details about Ethan. He was a man of quiet habits, meticulous and careful with his work, and though he rarely smiled, there was a warmth in the way he tended to the ranch and the people who worked there. Clara began to see him not just as a stranger, but as someone with his own story, someone shaped by life in ways she could not yet fully understand. She observed him helping the workers, mending fences under the blazing sun and quietly ensuring the animals were safe. It struck her that he cared deeply about responsibilities and those who depended on him. These were qualities she had not expected to find in a man she had feared. Their interactions started small. Ethan would occasionally ask Clara if she needed help with the chores, or offer advice on handling the animals. At first she was hesitant, unsure how to respond to his attention. She had expected coldness or strictness, not consideration. Yet over time she noticed herself relaxing when he was near. There was a rhythm to life on the ranch, a balance that strangely began to feel comfortable. One afternoon, a messenger arrived from a nearby town with news that a wildfire had started in the distant hills. The ranch workers were on alert, and Clara and Ethan worked side by side, securing the barns, rounding up animals, and reinforcing the fences. In the shared effort, Clara saw Ethan's calm determination, his focus unwavering even in danger. It was in these moments, as they worked together, that she felt a growing connection, a bond built not on romance, but on mutual respect and reliance. In the evenings, after the sun had dipped behind the horizon, they would sit quietly on the porch, listening to the sounds of the ranch. Clara began to talk more, sharing stories of her childhood, her dreams, and her fears. Ethan listened, not interrupting, his eyes fixed on the distant hills, occasionally nodding or offering a thoughtful word. It was a simple routine, yet for Clara, it meant more than she could have imagined. She felt heard, seen, and slowly she began to feel safe. One particular evening, Clara found herself laughing at a story about a mischievous goat from her old farm. Ethan chuckled softly, a sound so rare that it caught her off guard. "You have a way of seeing life differently," he said. "It's refreshing." His words, quiet and sincere, made Clara's heart flutter in a way she had never expected. It was the first time she realized that perhaps there was more to this stranger than she had ever imagined. The transformation did not happen overnight. There were still moments of tension, of misunderstandings, and of silent walls between them. Ethan remained reserved, and Clara still struggled with the past she could not change. But slowly, as days turned into weeks, the fear that had gripped her heart began to loosen. In its place grew trust, respect, and a budding sense of companionship that neither of them had anticipated. One morning, Clara woke to find Ethan already in the barn, repairing a broken fence. She watched him for a moment, admiring his focus and strength. "Good morning," she called softly. He looked up, surprised, then nodded. "Morning," he replied. She decided to join him, and together they worked side by side, talking occasionally, laughing quietly when something went wrong. By the end of the day, they were both tired, yet a quiet satisfaction settled over them. There was a rhythm to their partnership now, a silent understanding that grew stronger with each shared task. As the seasons changed, Clara began to notice subtle shifts in her own feelings. The fear that had once dominated her thoughts was replaced by admiration and slowly, by affection. She realized that she had grown stronger, braver, and more independent. She no longer saw herself solely as a victim of circumstance. She had become a partner in life, capable of facing challenges and making decisions of her own. Ethan, too, was changing. He had begun to open up more, sharing stories of his past, of hardships he had endured and lessons he had learned. Clara listened intently, understanding that his stoic nature was not indifference but a shield shaped by life's demands. In return, he listened to her, never dismissing her thoughts or dreams. In those moments, a quiet trust blossomed between them, a bond built on honesty and respect. One day, while walking through the fields, Clara paused to look at the horizon. The sun was setting, casting golden light over the land. She felt a sense of peace she had never known, a feeling that the future, though uncertain, held promise. Ethan stood beside her, silent but present, and she realized that she had come to depend on his presence, not as a command or obligation, but as a comfort. "Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if—" Clara began, hesitant, unsure how to phrase the thought. Ethan looked at her, his eyes soft. "I think about it sometimes," he admitted, "but we cannot change the past. We can only decide how we live now." Clara nodded, understanding the truth in his words. The past could not be undone, but the present offered new opportunities. She felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of hope that had been absent for so long. The turning point came one evening when a heavy rainstorm threatened the crops. The river near the ranch began to swell, and the barn risked flooding. Clara and Ethan worked tirelessly, moving supplies, reinforcing walls, and ensuring the animals were safe. The shared struggle drew them closer, and in the quiet moments between tasks, they spoke more openly than ever. "Thank you," Clara said at last, her voice barely above the sound of the rain. "For everything. For helping, for caring." Ethan looked at her, the usual sternness softened by something warmer. "You're stronger than you think," he replied. "I only help because I see that strength in you." It was then that Clara realized the depth of her own feelings. She did not love him in the way stories often told of instant passion, but she respected him, admired him, and felt a connection that had grown from trust, shared experiences, and quiet understanding. She saw the man beneath the stranger, and it filled her with a sense of belonging she had never known. As months passed, the hardships continued, but so did the growth of their bond. Clara learned the rhythms of ranch life, became adept at handling animals and tools, and gained the respect of the workers. Ethan, in turn, learned to trust her judgment, to appreciate her insight, and to recognize the courage she displayed in facing challenges. They were partners in every sense of the word, their relationship evolving naturally from obligation to friendship, and quietly to love. One evening, as they watched the sun dip below the horizon, Clara reflected on the journey she had taken. She had been forced into a life she did not choose, but that life had given her something she could not have imagined. She had discovered her own strength, resilience, and courage. She had found a partner who respected her, challenged her, and quietly supported her growth. And in the quiet moments, she had discovered affection, a gentle love that had grown slowly but surely, rooted in trust and understanding. Ethan spoke softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Clara, you've changed this place. And me. I never imagined someone could make such a difference." Clara smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "We've both changed," she replied. "I didn't expect to find so much here in a life I didn't choose. But somehow it became my own." The wind blew softly across the fields, rustling the tall grass. The house behind them, once imposing and cold, now felt like home. Clara knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she no longer feared them as she once had. She was stronger, braver, and had found a sense of purpose and belonging that had been missing. And so, as the stars began to appear in the clear night sky, Clara and Ethan stood together, side by side, ready to face whatever came next. The stranger she had been forced to marry had become a partner, a friend, and perhaps in time something even deeper. And Clara knew that no matter what the future held, she had already been changed forever. Life on the ranch was not always easy, and there were still moments of doubt and challenge. But Clara faced each day with courage, knowing that she had grown into someone stronger than she had ever imagined. The forced marriage that had once felt like a prison had led her to discover resilience, kindness, and a quiet, lasting love. And in that discovery, she had found the freedom she had longed for, not in escaping her circumstances, but in embracing them with strength and heart.